Sleeping Beauty.
Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen who had no children. They were so sorry about having no children that I cannot tell you how sorry they were. At last, however, after many years, the queen had a daughter. There was a very fine christening for the baby princess. The king and queen looked throughout the kingdom for fairies to be her godmothers, and they found 7 fairies. Each fairy godmother was to give the princess a gift, as was the custom of fairies in those days. In this way, the princess had all the perfections imaginable. After the christening ceremony was over, the whole party returned to the king's palace, where there was prepared a great feast for the 7 fairy godmothers. There was placed before each one of them a magnificent case of gold, in which were a spoon, knife, and fork, all of pure gold, set with diamonds and rubies. But as everyone was sitting down at the table, they saw a very old fairy whom they had not invited, because she had not left the tower where she had lived for over 50 years, and she was believed to be either dead or under an evil spell. The king could not give her a case of gold as the others had, because they had only made 7 for the 7 fairies. The old fairy felt insulted and muttered some threats between her teeth. One of the young fairies who sat by her overheard how she grumbled, and guessing that she might give the little princess an unlucky gift, went, as soon as they rose from the table, and hid behind the curtains. In the meanwhile, all the fairies began to give their gifts to the princess. The youngest wished that she should be the most beautiful person in the world. The next, that she should have the intelligence of an angel. The third, that she should have a wonderful grace in everything she did. And the fourth, that she should dance perfectly well. And the fifth, that she should sing like a nightingale, and the 6th, that she should play all kinds of music to the utmost perfection. The old fairy's turn came next, and shaking her head with more spite than anger, she wished that one day the princess would have her hand pricked by a needle on a spinning wheel, and that she would die of the wound. This terrible gift made the whole company tremble, and everybody began to cry. At this very instant, the young fairy came out from behind the curtains and spoke these words aloud. "Assure yourselves, O king and queen, that your daughter shall not die of this disaster. It is true, I have no power to undo entirely what the elder fairy has done. The princess shall indeed pierce her hand with a needle on a spinning wheel, but instead of dying, she shall only fall into a deep sleep, which shall last 100 years, at the end of which a king's son shall come and awake her." The king, to avoid the misfortune foretold by the old fairy, immediately made a law by which everybody was forbidden, on pain of death, to use a spinning wheel, or to have any spinning wheel in their house. About 15 or 16 years later, on a day when the king and queen were busy in a far corner of the vast palace, the young and beautiful princess amused herself by running up and down the corridors and going up from one apartment to the other. Eventually, she came into a little room at the top of the tower, where a good old woman alone was spinning with her wheel. For this good old woman had never heard of the king's law against spinning wheels. The princess said, "What are you doing there, good old woman?"
Godmother. Godmother. Christening. Christening. Princess. Princess. Palace. Palace. Spinning wheel. Spinning wheel.
Ashore. Ashore.
Disaster. Disaster. Misfortune. Misfortune. Grumble. Grumble.
Nếu thấy hay và hữu ích, các bạn hãy like, share và comment ủng hộ ở bên dưới nhé. Để theo dõi nhiều bài học bổ ích khác, các bạn hãy subscribe kênh YouTube của Topica nhé.